Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom. And thanks, as always, to my absolutely favorite bookstore in America, Politics and Prose. I love that bookstore. And thanks to each and every one of you for being here. I'm particularly glad to be with so many friends tonight. I don't mean that in, with some double meaning. I just mean friends, old and new. Some of my oldest friends are in the audience here. It means a great deal to me because tomorrow is my birthday, and I'll be all alone on an airplane going for 6 hours to some place. I haven't checked the schedule yet, but I think it's something like Portland, Oregon, or San Diego, and I just bet United Airlines is not going to give me any presents. I just know it. Are there any teachers with us here tonight? How many? Oh, great. I'm glad. I always feel safer when I'm in a room with teachers. Teachers are my heroes, especially, I will admit, the ones who work with little children in the elementary grades, because those are the grades I used to teach. I just think they do the best thing there is to do in life. Bring joy and beauty, mystery, and mischief to the hearts of little pint-sized people. If I ever decide to stop writing books, I sometimes think I'd like to go back to first grade and do it all again. I became a teacher in 1964. I had never intended to become a teacher. I'd grown up in a privileged family. My mother and father were very ambitious for me. I'd gone to Harvard, forgive me, where I majored in Shakespearean era poetry and metaphysical poetry, studying with a wonderful poet named Archibald MacLeish. And probably because of MacLeish, I won a Rhodes to Oxford. Got bored at Oxford, actually. Partly because so many of the Harvard boys talked as if they were British. Even the ones from Idaho sounded like British royalty. So I moved to Paris, and I spent a couple years studying in Paris at the feet of some great authors, American writers who are living there, Bill Styrer and Richard Wright. Came back to the United States early in 1964, planning to go back to the university to lead an academic career. When my life was totally transformed forever in the summer of that year, when the rising tide in the fight for civil rights swept across the nation, and thousands of young people of my age were heading down to Mississippi to try to break the back of segregation in the South. I was living in Cambridge at the time. One day, I simply got my car. This was the 1960s, so it was a little car, the VW Bug. And I drove across town into the black community. I'd never been in the black community before, although I'd grown up just outside of Boston. And I went to a minister, a wonderful man, Jim Breeden. Some of you may recall his name, a revered figure in the black community, a close associate of Dr. King. And I asked him simply, may I be of use? And he said, yes, young man, you can. And he said, I'm glad you came here to talk with me in your own hometown, because you don't need to go to Mississippi to find injustice in America. He said, you can join the struggle here. Come into our schools and try to help our children. So I walked into the headquarters of the Boston Public Schools one day, and I said, I'm going to be a teacher. Because I'd never heard of certification, you know. I knew nothing about teaching, because they didn't teach you anything useful at Harvard. They still don't teach you much that's useful there. The first day I ever taught, they sent me to teach kindergarten. First time I ever taught in my life. I was terrified. I had no idea what you do with people that size. To me, they were like gerbils. I let them crawl all over me, you know. But I survived. So they promoted me to be a fourth grade teacher. And in one way or other, I've been working with young people ever since. Starting in the late years of the 1980s and throughout the 1990s, I began to spend my time with a bunch of little kids living in New York in a section called Mott Haven, which was then and is still today the single poorest neighborhood in all of the South Bronx, which remains to this day the poorest congressional district out of all 235 congressional districts in America. I thought I'd seen poverty in Boston, but I'd never seen anything on this scale before. Readers ask me all the time, what happened to those children? Did you keep in touch with them? How many have survived? How many did not? And for those who did survive, how'd they obtain a decent education? How far did their education take them? What are they doing now? Some of them, I'm sad to say, never did recover from the battering they underwent in schools that were, with one or two exceptions, amongst the worst I've seen anywhere in the United States. And streets where needle drugs and crack cocaine were almost everywhere. Three of the boys who suffered most, sad to say, no longer are alive. One of them, I'd known him when he was 8 years old. He finally killed himself with a bullet to his brain in a moment of despair. Another killed himself intentionally with an overdose of heroin. A third died by surfing on a subway train. Do you all know what surfing is? It's riding on the tops of the trains under the tunnels of New York. And his friends were lying down flat. But he, in a moment of bravado, as if to say, nothing that this city does to me can stop me now, as if he were invincible, he suddenly lifted up his head and waved to his friends. A steel beam struck his skull. His body shuddered twice. Then he was dead. He was not yet 14 at the time. Those were only three of several kids who lost their lives, their hopes, their dreams at a very early age. I mourned for them with their mothers. I mourn for them to the present day. Happily, there are other children, many, many children in this book who battled back courageously against the formidable obstacles they faced. And with the help of grown-ups who intervened at crucial times,